Ladies and gentlemen, Tati Vance here, and welcome to a news update. Now today we're going to be talking about the upcoming new flight model and how this will affect the game and also how it would affect your experience within Star Citizen in the coming years. The objective in the new flight model is to make ships feel different and have different character rather than having an overall flight experience where all ships feel the same. This would include feedback inside the cockpit and giving you visual feedback on fuel, heat and power, both on the displays and the way the ship maneuvers. So what needs to change in the current flight model to get closer to an experience like we've just spoke about? First off, the controls will be changing. The first change will be the speed control. This will quite simply be W or S. As soon as you stop accelerating, you will maintain your speed, and obviously S being decreasing the acceleration. This will follow suit through to flight sticks and HOTAS. A new addition will be max velocity. You will have an option to set a decouple mode target velocity. For example, if you set your max velocity to 110 and you were flying at that speed and you turned, you would decrease in speed, but at the same time, the ship's computer will bring you back to the set speed of 110. Clearly, this will work slightly different when you are decoupled. Next up is thrust power. The thrust power is the amount of thrust that you want to apply when you are accelerating. So looking at the previous example, if you set your max speed to 110 and you had 20% thrust, the ship's computer would take you up to 110 with 20% thrust. Both max velocity and thrust power can be controlled independently. Both are optional. You don't have to set a max velocity. You also don't need to set max power, but the options are there for you to take more granular control over the ship. So how would this affect HOTAS? What you could do with the HOTAS is set the throttle lever to the center. Pushing forward would add more thrust. Pulling back would have the reverse effects. You could also bind the retro thruster, which is like the space brake, to one of the buttons on that same thrust lever. So what happens to Afterburner? Afterburner is no longer needed and will be removed. What about Boost? Boost has now been renamed to Afterburner. When activated, either by pressing Shift or bound to one of the HOTAS buttons, you will get more acceleration out of the ship. So moving on, how do we get to cruise speed? To get to cruise speed, you simply just accelerate up to the cruise speed. This can be done coupled or decoupled. You just accelerate past the SCM speed. In addition to this, when you go past the safe maneuvering speed of the ship in coupled mode, the faster you go, the more of the angle of the velocity reduces. So basically, the faster you go, the less you can turn. The reason they've added this is to reduce down the angle of drift. So the effect you are getting is your onboard computer is reducing down the angle to prevent drift. Clearly, you can decouple and drift as much as you want. You will also have the ability to set an SCM safe target speed. So think of this as a max top speed. This will also comprise of a minimum speed. So for example, if you set it for 310 as the max, you could set the low at 290. The ship will then fly within them targets. Once again, this doesn't have to be used, it's optional and can be turned off. Are we going to see a change in the way that the engines work? The engines are being based on VASIMR. I think I've said that right. That's VASIMR. This stands for Variable Pacific Impulse Magnetoplasma Rocket. It's a bit of a mouthful there. This is being based on a real-life technology, a rocket technology that is in development. This will give the ability for Star Citizen to define some base parameters that can be applied across the ships. So overclocking. We will have the ability to overclock our ships. There are a few reasons why you might want to overclock your ship. Firstly, because overclocking your ship will give you more power. The downside would be that it would generate more heat and also use more fuel. On the latter, if you were to underclock your ship, you would generate much less heat and use less fuel and power, giving you more power for other components on the ship. This is going to be personal preference, or I suppose depending on what activity you're doing. I should imagine it will vary between doing cargo runs, FPS, atmospheric flight, and so on. So what's the consequences of overheating? When your ship overheats, your engines and thrusters will wear out. If you constantly overheat your maneuver thrusters and engines, over the period of a long duration of time, the engines will wear out and be, one, less efficient and produce less power, and secondly, when it moves more into the terminal phase, you could also experience misfires. So this could affect forward thrust if it's the main engine, or it could even affect one of the thrusters on the ship that would affect the maneuverability on that particular thruster. There will be options for us to purchase different types of thrusters of different grades. These will perform much better under high temperatures. Alternatively, you could go for a cheaper option that don't necessarily perform well at high temperatures. This is all based on what you're using the thruster for. If you know you're going to be overclocking, it might be wise to go for a higher grade engine that gives you longevity and will perform better over a period of time. If you're going to be doing something like cargo and you don't intend to overclock, there's a possibility you could go for the lower grade equipment on the basis that you're going to not be overheating. But keep in mind, there may be a reason for you to overclock your cargo ship. If someone's chasing you, you might want to get away. Atmospheric flight, you might want to move out of atmospheric flight to evade someone. Once again, overclocking could be important to you as well. With all of these changes, there is something else that will be affected within the game, and this is how damaged states will affect maneuver thrusters and engines. If you are flying in a ship and following, let's say for example, a cargo hauler, and you target one of the engines repeatedly, a damage multiplier can then be applied against that engine, affecting the capability of that engine. This is important because it adds another level of gameplay. It gives us the ability to disable ships without physically destroying the ship, other than obviously using EMP. So what does this mean for all of us who have ships currently in game, and how will they be affected? All the ships in the game are going to be rebalanced. The main objective here is to create more varieties and character between the different types of ships. One of the reasons this needs to be done, because in the current build, there are ships in game that have more power to the maneuver thrusters than they do to the engines. An example of character in a ship could be that yours is very good on this particular ship compared to another ship. For example, the Hornet has great forward thrust capability. So what you can expect is if you swap out from a Hornet to a Gladius to an Aurora, you're really going to feel the difference in the way that the ships fly between the three of them, adding more character to the ships. Another example would be comparing the Aurora to the Gladius and the Hornet. Now clearly it's no match for them two ships, but saying that, the Aurora is a much lighter ship. Although the thrusters are smaller, it will have more strafe direction than the Hornet, but clearly the main thrusters of the Hornet are much powerfuler. We can expect to see many comparisons like this across all the ships in Star Citizen. So next up is how this affects atmospheric flight. To this day in the current build, we do not have lift. Atmosphere is a recalculation of space. In 3.5, we will see a new atmosphere. This will include drag and also include lift and turbulence. So in 3.5, once we get lift, this will enable you to turn the engines off in a Gladius and glide for a period of time because of the lift. Now ships with wings that are aerodynamic and have lift capability will clearly fly better in atmosphere. So an example could be a Aurora flying in. The Aurora doesn't have the best lift in the world, so it will be a little bit more challenging to fly. That's not stopping you reducing down your thrust to bring back more control and reduce your speed. So finally, there are some other changes coming as well. All the ships in the game are going to have new audio applied to the ship's thrusters and engines. We will have a new experience in sound in atmospheric flight. All the AI will use the exact same flight system. Dual sticks improvements, slightly better FPS and lower CPU performance. This will also enable Star Citizen later on down the line to introduce new thrusters and engines and it'd be quite easy for them to calculate on how that affects the ship. New UI updates, and we're going to see the return of the G-force meter. And then finally, we will see the hover bikes and vehicles also having an update as well. So all in all, there's quite a lot there. This is a significant change. And on face value, this looks like a really, really good move from Star Citizen to move to a much better flight mechanic. It's undoubtedly going to make it a little bit more difficult to fly, and what I mean by that, a higher level of skill, but it's definitely something I'm looking forward to. That's everything we're going to be seeing in the new flight mechanic, so let me know in the comments on the bits that you're looking forward to, or maybe let us know what you would also like to see added to the flight mechanic to make it even better. The last thing on the agenda today, if you're looking to join a Star Citizen organization, check out the link in the description below. That's it for me. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to subscribe. Bye now.